Battlefield 1 has been out for more than a couple of weeks now, and that has given me enough time to compile a list of things that definitely need changing in upcoming patches. Now I just want to get this out of the way at the beginning. I'm very impressed with Battlefield 1. It's been a clean release, I've enjoyed the gameplay. Yes, there are things that I don't like and things that I like probably more than others, but that's just the way games are. You can't expect to have a game that is 100% perfect, but overall I'm impressed with the game. There are, however, some very, very important things that need changing, and things that I think that DICE haven't even thought about when putting the game together and haven't even tested, which kind of annoys me if I'm honest, because as you'll see when we go through this video, they're very, very simple things that could have been tested beforehand. Of course, we're always going to have the issue of balance, so I'll go over that with a couple of things in regards to the vehicles, possibly the weapons and the classes. It'll be quite a long video, so hopefully you'll watch it if this is the sort of stuff you're interested in. If not, you can just leave a couple of comments down below and just argue with people, whatever you want to do, I don't really mind. But the fact of the matter is, there are things that need changing, and of course DICE will have to address them in upcoming patches. For me, the biggest problem with the game at the minute isn't actually the game itself. As weird as it sounds, the biggest problems I'm having is with the Origin overlay. That thing is a complete mess. If it just followed the idea that Steam has, integrated properly, works well, doesn't bug out, doesn't crash, doesn't cause me to have to tab out and tab back in order to use vehicles and have the proper controls. The idea behind the Origin overlay is so you can join on friends seamlessly, you can join parties, and you can just get involved with the game very, very quickly. If you got some mates, you can just, and they're playing, you can just join on them. And in theory, it's a great idea. It means it takes away the problem of Battlelog, because let's be honest, Battlelog had a lot of bugs with it. Quite often you'd spend half an hour trying to join a server just because it wouldn't load you in, and there were all these workarounds where you had to use port forwarding, where you had to use different browsers, you had to restart, you had to log out, log in. That was a mess as well, but to be honest, I preferred it over the setup we've got now. There'll often be times where I'm trying to play online with a mate, and I know he's online, I'm talking to him on TS, and he's not invisible because he's checked, yet he doesn't show up in my friends list. Now this is ridiculous, it's not a thing that should be happening, it needs to be sorted out as soon as possible. There's also an issue with the party settings. I have people in my friends list, quite a lot of people in my friends list actually, who I don't talk to on a regular basis. However, they are free to join my party whenever they want. Now I don't really mind this, because if somebody's in my friend list, then surely they should be able to join my party, that's the way it should be. However, whenever they click on a game to join, a big screen pops up saying a game is available for your party, would you like to join? Well no, of course I don't want to join, I'm in the middle of a dogfight with somebody and now I've crashed into the ground, so thank you very much for that. It would be much better if that didn't come up on screen, if there was maybe an option to have it up on screen if you wanted it, or maybe a little flashing icon in the top corner of the screen, something like that. But to be honest, there's no reason to have that massive box coming up and disturbing your gameplay. I'm in the middle of a game, and the chances are somebody's joined my party and tried to drag me out of it. Nobody wants that to happen. There is also the issue of using the Origin overlay in game, where you click Shift F1 and it appears on screen. Whenever you use that in the spawn menu, or in the gap between two games, and then you get in game and say you spawn in a vehicle, you don't have any control over that vehicle. Your mouse and keyboard don't work. You have to then Alt Tab out of the game and then load back in. Now it's not a massive issue, because it's something that obviously we found a fix to that only takes half a second, but again, it's something that shouldn't be in the game and surely would have been come across if it had been checked. It can be easily fixed, I'm sure, and it has to be sorted out in the next patch. I know with this sort of stuff it feels like I'm demanding quite a lot, but I feel that these sort of things should be polished on a game that was quite expensive at release and has so many committed players to it. I feel like if they fix these things, the game can be a lot better, and less people will get frustrated and start to quit, because I know that's the sort of thing that happens with these games, where after a couple of weeks the gameplay starts to get just a little bit stale and these bugs become a lot more annoying and frustrating. Let's for a minute talk about the vehicles in Battlefield 1. As you know, I love my vehicles and I do spend a fair bit of time using them in Battlefield games. Battlefield 1 is no different, however I'm not really stuck to the tank as I was in BF4. It's not a massive part of my game now. I do play a lot more infantry because of course that's what the game's all about. For me with the vehicles, there aren't really that many bugs, but there are a couple of really annoying things that often happen to me. On the spawn-in screen, I'll click on a vehicle. Quite often, it will load me in the middle of the map with that vehicle's class and no vehicle. Awesome. Especially if you're in a plane at the beginning of a game and it just spawns you in the middle of the water. with the plane class and you've got no way to get to the map apart from swimming. That's not good at all. It shouldn't be like that. An easy fix for me is having a countdown, especially taking into account that not everybody can afford an SSD and can't load in. Have a countdown like you had in the official servers of Battlefield 4. That means everyone's on a level playing field when the game starts and the vehicles spawn maybe 2 seconds after the game started, and if you're not fast enough to click on them, that's your own problem. But that way everyone's on a level playing field and I think it works better. Having a system where people can load in quicker than you and then double click on vehicles and spam before the game started leaves you in a big mess at the start of a game. It's not the way to go. There has to be a countdown in my opinion. It just removes all of those issues altogether. With that being said, I think it would be great to introduce a timer like they had in Hardline for the vehicles. I'm still not exactly sure when vehicles respawn on this game, and I'll find myself waiting in the spawn menu for a couple of minutes sometimes when I know the tank's down because a teammate of mine's had it and he said he's just been killed with it, and I'm waiting there to take it. And of course it doesn't spawn in, or when it does spawn in, it's at a completely random point. Sometimes it does just respawn immediately after the tank goes down or the plane goes down, but sometimes it doesn't. If there was the ability to click on that vehicle and then view it when you click escape on your keyboard like you could do in Battlefield 4, I think that would be a great addition. I also feel like the balance with a couple of vehicles is completely off. They've nerfed the light tank so heavily, and I completely agree with what they've done with the howitzer. It was way overpowered in terms of the damage it could output in the beta, but the damage they can now receive is silly. If you've ever been spammed by a mortar on this game, and that's something we'll get onto in a little bit, you'll know that HE mortar can do a huge amount of damage to pretty much everything, including the light tank. Now it doesn't do a massive amount to the other two tanks, but the light tank for some reason is just a sitting duck. This means that no one in their right mind is going to take a light tank, which again, maybe not a massive issue because you can take a big tank, you can take a land ship. There are other options. Why not try out what we had in the beta with the tank being nice and strong, but just nerf the damage of the weapons that it uses? And maybe this is just a gripe that I have because I like my tanks and I've played in them a lot, and I just feel that the balance is completely off with that one. The planes in the game have again been changed quite a bit since the beta. The attack plane has now been switched around a bit, so you can't use the tank hunter loadout in order to get kills. You've got to use the ground support. Not a massive issue. I think that they've changed a couple of things, and that's just what happens when things get nerfed and buffed. You just find something else that works better for you. The bomber has a really overpowered gun on the back and can take a lot of damage, but again, I'm not massively disappointed with that because I think the bomber is something that should be used more in the game, seeming as though it's a 3-seater and can provide some really good squad gameplay. And the fighter, I haven't used the massive amount myself, but I'm thinking it's still pretty decent. There's a couple of loadouts that work quite effectively. There is, however, a couple of massive issues with the planes. The dusting needs sorting. The tank hunter loadout has some bad dusting problems with it, again as we had in the beta. I've got a couple of videos and highlights on my channel showing this. It's not ideal, it needs sorting. The netcode with the planes, I'm assuming it's the netcode, also seems really bad. There's often times when I'm pursuing a plane, I'm trying to shoot him and he's bobbing off in the distance and glitching about the place like he's got a 300 or 400 ping. Not sure why this is, but again, it needs fixing. That problem was not in the beta. Something has changed since then where they've messed with something. They need to put it back and test it before releasing the patch. It's not something that should be there, and it's very easy to spot if you're to jump in a plane with someone else in one in front of you. Also, the AA gun. I have no problem with an effective AA gun in a game, even though it might not be historically correct. That does not bother me one bit. An AA gun is important to combat air targets. The AA gun in Battlefield 1, however, is a complete joke. If you've used this thing before, you know how effective it can be, and I have no problem, as I said, with an AA gun being effective, but the way it works is wrong. First of all, you should not be able to aim it at infantry and vehicles that are right in front of you. There should be a 45-degree lock or something similar where you can't aim directly in front of you, where it forces you to aim a little bit higher. Planes are never in front of you anyway, so it makes no difference. Another way to fix this would be to change the way that they deliver damage to infantry and to vehicles, because they are very, very good at shooting across the map at infantry in this game. If you've ever used them on a map such as Monte Grappa, you can shoot miles away into the distance and do a load of damage. Another issue with them is the way they damage planes. Now, as I said, I don't mind an AA gun that does a lot of damage to planes. I have no issue with that at all. But the problem with them is, when you get hit by an AA gun, it disables a wing or your tail virtually instantly, which means you have limited control of your plane. You can't repair because of the way that they've done this in Battlefield 1, and then you're stuck in midair just to be spammed by the AA, and more often than not you do have to bail out or die, which isn't good. You have no way of getting out of the way. Now sometimes if you spot the AA before it spots you, you can take them out. That's not an issue. But the way that it deals damage and disables your plane instantly is wrong. For me, it shouldn't be able to do that. It should just do damage to you as it does, but without that additional wing or tail damage that it usually does with its first shot. There's something there that needs to be fiddled with just to make it a little more balanced. I also feel that the range on some of the AA guns is absolutely ridiculous. Bear in mind that there is a lot of AA guns on most maps. Take Monte Grappa for example, you have them all over the place. You've even got them in your own base. Now that's fine as long as the range is limited. Imagine their team have taken 2 flags and they've got their base AA. That means that they control the entire airspace with AA guns without even having to do too much work. That's wrong in my opinion, completely wrong. It should be a little more balanced in my opinion. They've got to tweak it. If they don't, then I can see people getting really frustrated with this after a couple more weeks of gameplay. Now let's move on to the classes of Battlefield 1. I've spent the majority of my time either playing as an assault or playing as a scout. I've enjoyed the sniping, it's fairly easy compared to the other games for me personally, and I am enjoying playing it. Maybe this isn't ideal because people don't want scouts on their team, they want medics and they want assault players and support players, but that's just the way the game's built. There's not really too much they can do about this unless they change the whole sniper mechanic, and of course some of the maps do lend themselves to sniping already. The reason I'm playing the assault class a lot is because I enjoy the shotguns and I enjoy the machine guns. Fast firing, really good fun in close quarters, and I'm using them a lot on maps like Omeon and Argonne Forest. Not a massive problem with that class either. I do feel that there are too many grenades that you can use in these games though. I think especially on maps such as Argonne Forest when you're playing a game like Domination, why should you have all these anti-tank and gas grenades? I think maybe they could do something to limit the amount of grenades that a soldier can carry playing in an infantry only game mode. But again, not a massive problem, that's just the way the players have decided to use the game. The support class, however, is a bit of a disaster. I'm not really seeing a huge amount of people using it. There's nothing in that class really that screams out to me, use this instead of say the assault class or even the medic class, which had a lot of stick at the beginning of the game from people including myself, but after different guns have been unlocked, people are saying it's a lot better than initially expected. Guns such as the autoloading 8 are very, very effective at taking out other assault players, other medics, and of course you can do some damage to snipers as well, as some of the guns have fairly good range. The only thing that wants to make me use the support class is the mortar, and this has been surrounded with a bit of controversy. Whether you love it or hate it, the mortar was a big part of the First World War and it has to be included. However, the way they've implemented it in this game is a bit of a joke in my opinion. It is incredibly easy to use, you've got a really fast reload time, you can fire a load of shells at once and you get a big map that highlights where everybody is, and when you fire the mortar up in the air, the camera pans over the top of the map and shows you where everybody is. The HE mortar is so effective against infantry. Taking a map such as Suez, you can fire the HE mortar and take out buildings and get multiple kills, which again, I'm not massively against the mortar being effective, but then if you don't get kills, you can spam more, and then the reload time is really quick and you can spam even more. The airburst mortar has a habit of going through walls. I've been sitting on the bottom floor of a building and the airburst mortar has hit 2 floors above me and is doing damage to me. Again, not a massive fan of this. There are several fixes that they could introduce to this, but whether they will or not, I don't really know. I'm feeling as if they need to do something about the reload time. The mortar is something that you should be using once or twice, clearing out a section and then running in with the rest of your team, not camping on the back of the map as I'm seeing a lot of people doing, especially on maps like Suez, as I mentioned before, just spamming. I hate that in Battlefield games, the spam. Talking about spam, let's just have a quick chat about the gas grenades in Battlefield 1. They're going through walls and solid objects. This is not good. They need to fix that. It's probably quite a simple fix, but it has to be fixed. I also think that you should only get 1 gas grenade instead of 2. I think this will solve some of the issues with people complaining about too much gas on certain maps, especially, as I mentioned before, Argonne Forest. It can become a complete cluster of gas grenades on some flags, and that's not ideal. I know you get a gas mask and you can avoid it, but there's no need to have 2. Just have 1. It's a bit more tactical using your gas grenades instead of just launching them as soon as you spawn. The final thing I'd like to talk about today is the behemoths and what I make of them so far. Now in the beta I was a massive fan of it. I thought that when it did appear, the train did quite a good job of capping a couple of flags and giving the team that was losing a bit of a morale boost and of course some flags to help them get a foothold in the game. Now for the most part the Behemoth actually does quite a good job in some games. In Conquest games it's coming in and doing a pretty good job, especially the trains on Amiens and on Sinai Desert. The airship, not still sold on it completely, but it's doing a pretty good job again on some maps. Monte Grappa, it's a bit of a joke because it's just sitting there getting spammed by all the AA guns. But on some maps such as St. Quentin's Scar, it can do a bit of good getting on flags, capping them, taking out tanks and stuff like that. So I do agree with it as a way of changing the game. One thing that I absolutely hate about the Behemoths is how they operate in operations. I think that when you lose a game of operations, you shouldn't be rewarded the next time out with a Behemoth to essentially spam the enemies back into their base. The way it should work is you should get a Behemoth towards the end of a game of operations just to give you that final chance. You shouldn't just get it if you've lost. You've lost because you've been camping and you haven't capped an objective. That's the way it works in operations. Of course there'll be the odd game where the other team's just way too good for you and you can't get out and cap the flags, but most of the time it's because your team's camped. There should be a better way of forcing a team to cap objectives than giving them another tool to spam the enemies. There have been several discussions surrounding this on Twitter. People have way better options to fix this than I do, but there's no doubt that this does need a look at. And of course with the first major DLC in March, they're going to be bringing out even more operation stories. So it would be nice to see a fix definitely before then, hopefully with the first major patch, that maybe just introduces some sort of little fix to the Behemoths. One final thing about operations, I really wish that you could skip that annoying cutscene at the beginning. I've already watched it about 20 times for each one. I don't want to watch it anymore. Please just have an option where I can get rid of that and load into the game like I would in a game of Conquest or something like that. I also want to load into a game of operations right at the start. I don't want to join a team that's just lost 2 times in a row and I'm about to get another loss and not even have a chance to play the game from the start. Let me have an option to join a game of operations at the start and wait a minute or two for the server to fill up. And also pick whether I want to be a defender or an attacker. Very simple fix that would make my experience of operations way better. Hopefully you enjoyed this rant. It went on for quite a while, but there are some things in this game that definitely need addressing. Hopefully you agree with some of them. If not, let me know why you don't in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.